the teams that after they make a pick and then the camera's in the room, like they have the whole room stand up and clap. Like, I mean, give me a break. So, but we just
Come on, Nick. We had Nick Caserio on Payne and Pendergast right before I left on vacation a little while ago. And I showed you guys last week the players that I got excited about based on what Nick had told me. But he said a few more interesting things, especially on the business side, that were intriguing to me, and just also on some of the team management and the way they approach players with contract negotiations. But we did have to ask him about the social media policy in the wake of CJ Stroud, like being very comfortable on podcasts and just, starting beef or continuing beef with the Colts linebackers or what have you. And I know you guys have various feelings about that. We just asked Caserio about how do you handle being an older guy from a different generation, knowing that these guys are going to be on social media, and just how do you talk to them about it?
Just protect the team. Always thinking about the team first and foremost. Making sure your focus is on football first and foremost, because your football is what leads to those opportunities. Yeah. So hasn't affected his work in the offseason. Nobody works as hard as CJ. He's committed to winning. He wants to be great. I mean, you all have heard him talk. I mean, he cares a lot about winning. So, and if you care a lot about winning, you're going to put a lot of work into football. So everybody's got their own personality, and to your point, that's something that D'Amico and I have talked about. Just be yourself. Just be who you are. We're not going to force feed you or force you to do something.
The thing about CJ on the podcasts, and whichever fan base would get upset about whichever comment that he made, I think the big difference with CJ and some of the headline grabbing stuff that he's said on podcasts when he's having a conversation, they come from a place where it's him having a conversation with guys, and it's stuff that he would have said to their faces. I think it's just CJ sitting in the barbershop having an argument with guys about sports. And there's a difference, and I don't think I'm just carrying water for CJ here or anything. If you think about some of the guys who have been notoriously almost antisocial, a lot of the other guys that just do things curiously on social media, it's more of a symptom of a lot of the other things that are issues for them as players, whether they're locker room cancers or what have you. And with CJ, I just don't get that sense at all. I think that it might make it fun, because I think fan bases like the Colts already, and perhaps the Jets, because of where CJ power ranked Aaron Rodgers, like some of the fan bases might be already starting to, I would say, prematurely hate CJ. Usually the young quarterbacks aren't hated until your team has got beaten by them a bunch of times over and over again. But I feel like some of that good animosity from other fan bases might be good, especially if it keeps anybody from tempting him in free agency. Next was Caserio on how they handle negotiating with players who are already on the team, saying, I believe this came in a conversation about their negotiations with Nico Collins.
In the end, anytime you negotiate, everybody wants to feel decent about how the negotiation went. Mm-hmm. We're not trying to, quote unquote, win a negotiation. We're trying to do what we think is best for the organization, slot the player in accordingly where we think he fits. And you have to balance. And the hard part for us is we're worried about the Houston Texans and how our team is put together. Sometimes a player and the agent are looking at it from an individual lens, and they're focused on it, and no problem at all. And then they're looking around and what's going on with the rest of the league. And we're certainly cognizant of that. Like, it'd be ignorant of us to not, consider that. Yeah. You have to factor that in.
This is one thing where I think Nick's ability to separate emotion and pride and ego from negotiations or personnel decisions is huge, because I think he understands, first and foremost, that, like he said, you're not trying to win a negotiation. The classic, I'm going to win this negotiation, I'm going to get something over on him or whatever. That's awesome if you're like buying a car or buying a house or just having a one-off transaction with somebody. You're at a flea market, I don't know. But if you're going to have an ongoing working relationship with somebody, the last thing you want to do is get one over on that person, And if you do, even if you feel like you got one over on them or you get an extreme bargain, it's got to be because that guy is totally cool with it. I mean, famously, the best example of that would be that Tom Brady was cool for playing for way less than his market value for a long, long time with the Patriots. I don't think Nick believes that many other quarterbacks would or should have that attitude. I don't think you can expect guys to have that attitude, but that was just a dynamic that they were able to work with in New England there. There's some players that they really they want to have the highest average per year. They want the highest average per year on their contract. And all right, well, that's what that guy wants. Meanwhile, we as a team, we don't want to part with too much guaranteed money, or, to make that happen, we might have to take a little bit on the other side. And that's where, sometimes that can work out to the team's advantage, but then that player's just happy to have his ego stroked and to, for a little while, be the highest paid player. I saw when Randall Cobb was on the Bussin' with the Boys podcast, he was telling them, I think, which is the smart approach, is like he doesn't care at all about the average per year. He cares about the guaranteed money. Like, how much am I guaranteed? Or, in the bigger deals, how much comes in the first 2 years? And okay, whatever my average per year is, if I've got more guaranteed money than the other guys. And it's all individual. Nick is not a big fan of draft day celebrations from the war room. When you see the GM or the entire draft room, like with the Falcons, stand up and applaud when you land that 5th round pick. Not a fan.
I'll probably get cursed out for this, but, the teams that after they make a pick and then the camera's in the room, like they have the whole room stand up and clap. Like, give me a break. But we just
call him out, Nick.
We just pick the phone up. Hey, we're on the clock. We're about to pick you.
Okay, so the Colts, right? The Colts damn do a docudrama on every draft pick they have. I feel like that was directed exactly at the Colts. And I think that Nick and Ballard probably get along just fine. But that's what I choose to believe. So the Colts are a fan base who CJ has already insulted by calling. What did he ever call?
But I guarantee if I went to the Colts or to a weak city, he would not be here. And I don't blame him. No cap.
How you like Houston?
And then his smack talk with Zaire Franklin and EJ Speed in the offseason.
Oh, yeah, I'm coming to hit. I'm going to hit CJ in his face. I'm going to get him next year. Why don't you do something? Like, where I'm from, we say, why ain't you do something where you was mad at? You was mad right there, man. Do something. Right. You could have made hella plays, bro.
And I think this will be perceived as a shot at Chris Ballard. I'm feeling very, very good about all of this. I do think the next clip kind of speaks to perhaps why they don't have these huge celebrations. And it's another thing I really like about Nick Caserio is his realism about what the draft actually is.
Our room is very, I don't want to say relaxed, but it's just, we don't make it more than what it really is. So we're just kind of going through the process. You're going to go and pick the pick. All right, what's the next opportunity? What are our options? Is there an opportunity to trade? Are we going to pick? Are we going to move back? So you're just trying to keep it as normalized as possible because you don't want to make decisions under duress. It's like when you're on the field as a player, like you want to make sure you're in a good state of mind, that you're relaxed. If you put more pressure on yourself, then you're creating unnecessary tensions.
Yeah, and I think especially when you just, in anything in life, like Nick was saying, whether it's playing or drafting or gambling, which like the draft is, it's a gamble. You're playing the probability with those picks. And I think Nick does a really good job, I'm guessing, of just looking at draft picks as just cards in a game of poker, or just something that's a probability cloud. And I think that it serves two purposes. One is that on draft day, it keeps you from making rash decisions. It keeps you from getting, perhaps getting outside of your comfort zone or what your strategy was. Certainly, you just want to control your heart rate and your emotions in that moment. But I also think that it's really important when you get too wrapped up in a draft pick, or when you're a little too confident in your appraisal of a player, that's when things start to happen. Like you ignore the 7th round defensive tackle in training camp because you're so psyched about how smart you were to draft the 2nd round defensive tackle. And you continue to give that 2nd round defensive tackle chance after chance after chance, when meanwhile some of the other players on your roster maybe are showing good things, but that 2nd rounder's got his halo effect. So just whatever position, whatever draft pick it is, I think Nick very much understands some of these guys are going to develop, some aren't. Some of my draft Some of my draft assessments are going to be correct and some aren't. And you just got to keep an open mind about it all the time. And it starts with when you draft them. If you feel like you won the draft with a draft pick in the first round, you're not being 100% honest with yourself, because you're forgetting all the various times that you or every brilliant GM who ever existed whiffed on a first-round pick. It's just not. It's a big crapshoot in a lot of ways. So that's why I like Nick and his ability to be a robot. Okay, this is a issue near and dear to my heart.
Like, it's been long enough now, Nick. It's not just like small samples that like. Why do you hate small school guys so much? Like, everybody except Tank Dell on a technicality wasn't a Power 5 guy, but you drafted nothing but Power 5 guy. Is it just the level of competition that they face? Do you feel better about it?
No, in the end, it goes back to the same thing, the player. So we're not anti-small
You haven't
school.
drafted any. You wouldn't have drafted me, I'll tell you that much.
In the 3-4, you would have been a good fit. So you would have.
But I went to a small school. I feel like the Patriots would have loved me. Nick Caserio with the Patriots would have loved taking a guy from Cornell.
We took Kyle Duggar from Lenore Ryan back in the day.
But with the Texans, it's been nothing but Power 5.
So we'll have to change that. We'll change that narrative.
Okay, good. Thank you. You're welcome to whichever kid gets drafted from a small school.
Purely a coincidence.
Texans.
Yeah, I'm not buying it. I was called bogus on that. I don't. It's not. It's just weird because in New England they were notorious for taking guys from Lenore Ryan or what have you. They had one draft where their top 2 draft picks were guys from non-Division I schools, or at least like a very minor conference from a non-Division I school. So I suspect with Nick that a lot of the GPS or the body tracking data that schools use, and some of the information that you have from the bigger schools and the programs, I think my suspicion is that he weights that pretty heavily because it's objective and because you can compare it to other guys and you can watch the way guys practice and all of that. And then when you add into it just the level of competition where you can see them week in, week out. Remember with Derek Stingley, he had talked about how it wasn't just Derek Stingley's film. It was going back and like watching him versus Jamar Chase in practice when he was a freshman. And I think that it's not like Nick doesn't appreciate that there are plenty of small school guys who make it in the NFL. I just wonder if he trusts it more. And he wasn't going to, I actually thought we had him pretty loosened up at that point. I thought he might have told us something on it.